Yeah, hello, Simon.
Hello.
Usha, good to
Hello.
see you again.
Hello, James. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Sila Vimala. Good to see you. Good to see you. Sorry, Shriya Nimala. Hi. And Palden, okay, very good. Welcome to you all. And Roberta, who is with us for the first time, will be known to some of. Right, so according to my notes, we were due to do a recap of verse 4 of the Karanyametta Sutta. By the way, just to test any of you, do any of you know why it's specifically called the Karanyametta Sutta?
There's more than one of them, isn't
Okay,
there? There's more than one of them, isn't there?
exactly so, Paladin. There is more than one, and this one just begins with the word Karaniya, and so it's distinguished by that. Okay, that was the easiest one. Can somebody please tell me, just analyze Karaniya for me?
It's the future passive participle of karoti. So what should be done? What is to be done?
Good, thank you very much, Simon. That was absolutely accurate. And as you will remember, it's one of several different forms of the past passive participle, which are pretty much interchangeable in meaning. So, welcome, David. For example, we know the word puja, and somebody who is venerable or worthy of puja is can you say pujetaba or pujaniya. And we have in the Mangala Sutta, puja pujaniyanam, the puja of those worthy, so pujaniya, so karaniya, worthy to be done, worthy, yeah, requiring to be done, fitting to be done. Okay, then back to verse 4. Let me just, Roberta, have you accessed all the various materials that we'll be using? Unmute, Roberta.
I'm not sure, James.
Okay, right. Not to worry, because I'll be screen sharing, and I'll be able to. I'll send you directly after this an email with the materials that we're using. This one, however, the Metta Sutta that we're looking at, you will certainly know by heart anyway. Call it up for a screen share. Okay, is the text screen shared with you? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Roger. So we're doing just a recap of this from last time, 2 weeks ago. Were there any particular comments or queries on it from last time? I can't remember where I mentioned last time that this Havara, which is a Pali form of a not very common Sanskrit word, Stavara, which is the same but beginning with an S, and stavira, both mean much the same thing. It's from the root sta, meaning star, meaning to stand, and the and it has the idea of upright, long-standing, or firm. So you get two forms. Let me just share. You get, oops, root sta, then you get stavara, Pali tavara. The original meaning of it was just standing or standing firm, and then steadfast or firm. And you get another Sanskrit word, virtually the same meaning, stavira, standing firm, long standing. And we all know what that is in Pali. What is it in Pali? In Pali, so I thought it was my fault, I didn't explain it earlier. It becomes Thera in Pali. Thera as in Theravada. It's that same one. So Theravada in Sanskrit is Stavira Vada, which is literally the teaching of the elders. So firm, long-standing, and then by extension an elder. So that's how it came. That's how we get the word Theravada, the teaching of the elders, the teaching of the firm and long-standing ones. Right, so before we move on to our next text, then, should we just, who didn't get a chance to chant or recite last time and would like to? Or wouldn't like to, but I'll pick on you anyway.
I wasn't here last time, so I'll volunteer.
Okay, just to explain to, I think anyone who's new here is Roberta. We have a certain kind of, not exactly a rule, but a practice here, that if you've got your video on and I can see you, that's a signal to me that you're volunteering to be called upon to perform or recite or chant or be asked a question. If you just want to participate without me calling upon you, that's absolutely fine. The signal there will be if you turn your video off. And it's perfectly acceptable, and it often happens, that if somebody generally doesn't want to be picked on, but suddenly, and so the video is off, and suddenly, oh, I know that one, I'll have a go. They can turn their video on and wave their hand, and that's fine as well. So you can selectively drop in and out as well. Okay, Palden, back to you, please, for a recitation of it. And after Palden, because Shri Amala, you weren't here 2 weeks ago. Has she left her screen? I'll call on her when she's back. Okay, Palden, over to you.
Actually, can I just ask a quick question? You know, in the second line, is there in some versions, is there another syllable? Dikava Yeva Mahanta? Because in my head, that's what it is. And I don't know if I've just I knew it by heart at one time. And I don't know if
Hang on, we had this question arising last time, and I think I corrected it on screen. 1 second, 1 second, I'll be with you. I think I copied and pasted it from the digital Pali reader. I'm looking now at our, many of you will be familiar with this book. The text that we have in our Samhita is Dighava Ye Mahantava, which is I corrected it on screen last time round, Palden. That's why. What have you got written in your text? Unmute, Palden.
it's what I've got in my head from when I used to know it by heart. So in my mind, it's Dikava Yeva Mahanta Majima Rasaka Nukatula.
this, you're putting a var where I've highlighted ye there, you're putting a var there.
Yeah, the var for this before the Mahanta rather than after.
Either is equally good Pali.
Okay.
Digha va ye va mahanta. Yes, that's good Pali. Digha va ye mahanta va. Equally good Pali. This is just the one I've got in a chanting book that I use, and I'm happy to stick with what we've got on screen. But if you got a different text with it reorganized as Digha va ye va mahanta, that's certainly good Pali.
Well, I think in my defense, what I've got is the text from when we did this first time round a couple of years ago.
Which I corrected on screen. So it may
Yes.
be,
Yeah,
may be that it could be that I can't remember whether I copied and pasted this or whether I typed it out myself. If I typed it out myself, that would of course increase the risk of error. Though I should say, actually, one thing I did want to say, some of you will have noticed several careless errors in English words that I've typed. I just wanted to reassure you to the extent possible that when I'm proofreading actually in Pali or Sanskrit, I tend to be five times more careful. Oddly enough, I don't know why it is, but errors in Pali and Sanskrit can leap out to my eye when I'm proofing much more than errors in the English. So hopefully the Pali and Sanskrit texts ought to be correct. This was either because I was copying from an old text, or from a different text rather, or because I got it wrong. I don't know which one it is. I think we can safely say Dighava ye Mahantava is either
Okay.
correct or one of the correct versions.
Okay.
And the one that you were reciting is certainly not wrong as far as Pali grammar and syntax go.
Okay. Well, I'll try and do it your way, but if I do it the wrong way around, it's because I'm.
That's perfectly okay, pal. I know it's such a nuisance when you've learnt something by heart, then you're told, "Ooh, there's an error in the text," so you've got to readjust what you've learnt by heart.
Okay.
Okay, so can I carry on, Paladin?
Ye kechi pana butati tasava tavara vanavasesa dikava ye mahantava majima rasakara nukatula.
Can you just do these last three words? So the beginning, rasaka.
Rasaka anukatula.
Right, okay. I thought I heard an extra superfluous r coming in, but maybe I misheard. One small thing on the channel, rasaka nukatula, is that I had the advantage a few days ago of having some very stern and disciplined chanting instruction from a person whom we invited to be stern and disciplined with us. Many of you will know Rachel Hall. And when you ask Rachel Hall to be stern and disciplined with you, by God, she is, you know. Anyway, she tends not to put the glottal stress, so rasaka. I've been saying rasaka anukatula. Of course, you can if you pause for breath. But the standard way is to let it all follow on rasaka anukatu, not rasaka anuka, but rasaka anukatula. That's a refinement. But I learnt it the painful and hard way a few days ago, which is why I'm sharing it with you now. Okay, thank you, Paladin. Shri Animala, would you like to chant this verse? I mean, it's easier for you in the same way that you learnt it when you were a little girl in Sri Lanka. So can you chant it for us in your Sri Lankan way?
Ye nipana bhutanang tasava. Excuse me. Open the gate number 1, okay? Somebody wants to come inside the house.
Okay, right.
Yeah. Ye nipana bhutana
It's, sorry, bhutati.
itana vidhi. Ne. Yekeni pana bhutan. Bhutani tasvati vata. I can't say like.
Shall I enlarge it for you?
Yeah, can you make it big a little bit? Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yekini pana bhuta titi tasvata thavaravan vanavase sa. Digavaye mahantaniya majjima rasakanu katula.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that you ran these vowels
Yeah,
together as
rasakanu
well.
katula.
Rasakanu katula. Can you just
Yes.
recite this last bit again?
Majjima rasakanu katula.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Sri
Yeah,
Animala.
my dog is barking.
Right. Is there anybody else who either has any comments or queries or wants to have a go at chanting before we move on to the our next verse of the Dhammapada? I shall call up. Okay, we can move on then. Oh, before we move on, Roberta, would you like to? Sorry, I'm pronouncing it in Italian way because my neighbour is Roberto, who's very Italian. So Roberta, so it's said in English properly. Would you like to give us a chant of the verse, Roberta?
From where to where?
Yeah, just this verse beginning Iekeci.
Yeke chipana buta titasawa tawarawa nanawasesa.
Yeah, and the second line?
Oh, Digawaye mahanta wa majjima rasaka anukatula.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Roberta. I noticed that you didn't Pavarava Anavasesa, and now I've looked back to our Samatha chanting book, and I've seen that you did it in that way. I am now convinced. Actually, now it's not Diltimilad because we've got two deviations now I've found between the text I took out of the digital Pali reader or wherever it was. So an alternative version is you can have this as the full R. Instead of Vanavasesa, you can have Vanavasesa. Either is correct.
Right.
As we know, the rules of Sandhi and what vowels are dropped and what are not are much more lax in Pali than in Sanskrit. In Sanskrit, there would be no choice. You'd follow the exact rule. Okay, right. Are we ready to move on then to our Dhammapada, chapter 8, verse 10. So here we go. Enlarge it for you. So, Abhivadana Sirasa Nichang Buddha Pachayino Chattaro Dhamma Vardhanti Ayuvarno Sukham Balam. Now, an interesting example of the use of the word sila. we're all familiar with the word, and in the Theravada, it's commonly used to mean on its own virtuous conduct, morality. The original meaning, if you go back to Vedic, the original it was Shila. It's Shila in Sanskrit, of course, in Vedic. The original meaning of Shila was not specifically virtue, but a characteristic conduct, a habitual characteristic form of conduct. And when it is the second member of a compound, as here, so the compound Abhivadana Sila, and you have Abhivadana Silin, the person. I'll deal with that in a moment. So let's imagine this is Abhivadana Sila. So here we've got Sila as the second member of a compound, and that when you find it as the second member of a compound, that very frequently means having something as your characteristic behavior, or just a characteristic of you. In fact, you can get what's apparent, what looks like. Let's get back to my iPad again. So we've got so it's Sanskrit Shila, Pali Sila. You can have something that is apparently a gross oxymoron. We know the word papa, meaning, well, often translated as sin, but it's any kind of evil. Somebody can be papa, looking at Pali now, somebody can be papa sila, which looks like an oxymoron, vice, virtue, sin and goodness. In fact, in a compound like this, papa sila, this is a case where the second member, sila, has the meaning of characteristic or habitual behavior. So if a person is papa sila, that's like prone to evil, terribly sinful. And you could have exactly the same in Sanskrit. Papa Shila, the only difference there being in Sanskrit would be shat, not a sa. In this case, we see the same phenomenon, Abhivadana Silissa. Abhivadana means offering reverence or praise. We have it in the chants of Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi. It's that Abhivadati, Abhivademi, and Abhivadana is the verbal noun. So if you are Abhivadana Sila, it means it's in your nature to do it. You characteristically, habitually offer reverence. What's happened with the Abhivadana Sila? Let me explain. I'll bring up the iPad again to explain. So as a compound, this can be construed in one of two ways. It can be construed as a possessive compound, meaning one whose characteristic is praising or offering reverence, or it can mean the characteristic of offering reverence. And it can be interpreted either way, depending on context. So in the verse that we're looking at, this is the genitive of one who, how have I translated it here? has the habit of making reverential salutation. Okay. Abhivadana sila, one of the interpretations, which is not the word used here, is one who has the habit of making salutation. So this could equally be the genitive of that, abhivadana silasa. So what's happened here? Does anyone want to tell me before I tell you? Why is it abhivadana silasa as if from abhivadana silin?
Well, is the dative of Silin Silissa?
In Pali, the genitive and the dative are effectively merged. So the
Okay.
silisa is kind of genitive dative, which wouldn't be in
Okay.
Sanskrit, but in
Genitive
Pali it
or
is.
is the genitive or dative of Silin Silissa,
Yes, it is.
whereas the genitive or dative of Sila would be Salasa.
Silasa, yeah. But why has it become silin at all? So if you said abhivadana silasa, that would actually have exactly the same meaning. What's happened is that the writer of this has taken abhivadana sila in the second, in one of two interpretations. Abhivadana sila would mean a person who has the characteristic, one who has the habit of making reverential salutation, or it can simply mean the habit of doing that. So if you take the word abhivadana sila, construe it as having the habit of doing something, as opposed to a person who has the habit of doing it, then you can take that noun and make it into an agent noun by changing the a to in, as in yoga, yogin. So
as it stands, James, the meaning then must be for him who habitually shows respect. Am I right? Or
yeah, go on, yes.
I mean,
So
that's
far
the
you
only
are.
that's the only meaning you can take from Silisa.
Yes, I mean of him who of or for him who has the habit of. The point I'm making here is abhivadana sila as I said, can be interpreted. It's a compound that, according to the standard rules of compounds, can be interpreted in one of two ways. It can be a determinative compound. Okay, sila, characteristic. What kind of characteristic? Abhivadana sila, the characteristic of making salutation. It can also be treated as a bahuvrihi, as a possessive compound, meaning one who has the characteristic of making salutation. Now, if you interpret it to refer to a person, namely a person who has that characteristic, that's the abhivadana sila, genitive dative of that person, abhivadana silasa. If, however, you interpret the compound as simply meaning not the person, but the characteristic of making salutation, either interpretation is equally valid under the rules both of Sanskrit and Pali. If you take it with that interpretation, just the characteristic, the habit, then that is a thing. And so, under a different rule, whereby you can change, favorite obvious example we all know, yoga, yogin, a yogi, one who practices yoga. So abhivadana sila, the characteristic, abhivadana silin, one who has that characteristic. So the genitive of silin is either silinor or silissa. So you can see that here the writer has treated abhivadana sila as the characteristic. Therefore, he wants to change it into a person who has that characteristic by changing sila to silin, as in yoga to yogin.
So it's not just descriptive of the Vuta Pachayano.
I take Buddha, but in apposition, namely another word also describing the same thing.
So it's
As
not
in-
the Buddha Pachayano. So the person who respectfully talks, one who's respectful of elders with reverential speech in that sense.
If you say if he was respectful of his elders with reverential speech or with reverential conduct, then you'd expect to see Abhivadana Silena,
Right.
because he's respectful by usually in instrumental form.
Yeah.
Here I take them to be, as it were, two nouns, two descriptive nouns in a list. Sri Nirmala, please come in.
Yes, it's in a, I
Sorry, your voice is breaking up.
Sila means one who habitually salute.
I'm very sorry, Sri
Yeah,
Nirmala.
my internet is not okay. That's what Sila means.
I regret I'm
Yeah, I can't hear you. Yes.
Sound isn't coming through. Is it? Could anyone else
Yeah,
get it?
I know. Something wrong with my laptop. Yeah, let me put it.
Okay. That's the problem. You see, at my kind of age and hearing, I'm not sure whether it's a technical default or my aged hearing. So, okay. So,
No. It's
okay, but did everyone else have a problem with hearing that? It may be that your sound will come back better. Try once more now.
Abhivadana Sila means one who habitually salute. Did you hear? Maybe
Okay,
that
I
sound
didn't
is
get
not
it.
come.
Was there anyone else who could get that? Because it didn't come through clearly for me.
You said Abhivadana is one who habitually salutes. That's what I
Oh, say okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So
That's
okay. Thank you, Paladin. Sorry, I think that may have been partly poor sound and partly poor reception of sound into my ancient ears. Abhivadana means reverential salutation. Literally, the word can be broken down into up talk, abhi, up or over, vadana, speaking. Vada, vadana. Vada is what you say. Vadana is more the act of saying. So abhivadana, I mean, talking up is literally what it means. But by it's come to me in the reverential salutation, in the sense of Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi, and like that. So Abhivadana, Srinimala, is the act of making salutation, and Abhivadana Silin means a person who has the habit or character, who regularly behaves in that way. Okay, is that clear for you, Srinimala?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Why is Nicham in the accusative, James?
Because it is used in the adverbial sense. You very often find take an adjective, put it in the neuter, singular, accusative. Well, nominative accusative is always the same for the neuter, but and then it makes an adverb. Have I done a note on Nietzsche? Because we know Nietzsche very well from, of course, anicca, which is characteristically or habitually translated as impermanence. And it's actually got an interesting analysis to it. So the word, call up iPad again. Sorry, I've lost my iPad. Here we are. Oops. chasing several screens. Here we are. So Nitya in Sanskrit, Nitya, and by regular phonetic mutation, as usual, of course, Nitya becomes Nitya in Pali. There is a suffix, tya. Let's look at the Sanskrit, it'll make it easier to follow. There's a suffix, tya, which means belonging in a certain place, belonging there. For example, there is the indeclinable adverb of place, amar, meaning, for example, at home or within the inner circle. It has that kind of meaning. And an amatya is one who belongs at home, one of your close inner circle. And in Pali, that has come with the regular phonetic mutation as amatya. Now, many of you may know that word as a minister, as in the minister of a king. In Sanskrit, amatya. It means one who belongs within the inner circle, the king's intimates. Ni means within, in. In fact, it's etymologically the same as our English word in, just with the Sanskrit word ni and in are the same word. So ni, so nitya analyzed literally as that which belongs within. In other words, a permanent, inherent being of something. So if something is anitya, means it does not have anything, that it has nothing that it is, that at its permanent inner core, at its inner core. There's nothing that it belongs within it. And by extension means nothing that makes it a permanent, enduring entity. There's no kind of enduring substance there. There's nothing, it has nothing within it, meaning there's nothing within it that makes it a surviving entity. And the teaching is that all phenomena that we observe, there is nothing within them that keeps them there, that belongs there as itself. It's anicca. They come together, they go apart again. So that's the explanation of why anicca means impermanent. There's nothing that belongs within it.
That's very interesting, because impermanent's quite a weak translation when you explain it that way.
Well, Paladin, you really have hit the nail on the head there. That is why we are here studying Pali, because we see all these translations, and the translations are good enough as they go one word to one word. You've got to do it. But when you examine the Pali word, oh yes, you see, it tells you so much more. Thank you for raising that vital point, Paladin. Good to be reminded why we're here. So there we are then with so nityam. Nitya is essentially an adjective, but here used adverbially in the neuter form, permanently, constantly. Roger, please.
Is the Nietzsche then a bit redundant in terms of the meaning of this, because the sila means means characteristic?
Yeah, I take your point. I certainly take your point. You can kind of slightly help the poet out of a fix here by, if you say Abhivadana Silissa, then new phrase Nityam Buddhapachayino. So he's effectively not repeating the exact meaning, but repeating the idea. So if you're something sila, you have the characteristic of doing it, means you're always at it. Nityam with the following word. I mean, I suppose you could say it's a little bit redundant within, besides poor fellow, he needed 2 extra syllables for that line. So Nityam
But you
came in handy.
you do often get like a synonyms for emphasis, is it, or as well as rhythm, in Pali text?
It is very, very frequent in Sanskrit and Pali.
Mm.
Hi,
Um,
James.
Yes, please, Usha, please come in.
It's occurred to me, listening to what we're saying, that could it mean that although this is the characteristic, it hasn't become the person's core, it hasn't become the essence yet. So it's not become to the extent that it's now the person's essence. Because once I was talking with Vanibharidam, and he was similarly explaining about Nietzsche, that it's like if you cut the trunk of a banana tree, it hasn't got a pith in it. So it hasn't become the pith of that person. So although it may be a characteristic in general nature, it hasn't become like when you're enlightened, it becomes your core, it becomes your pith. It becomes the essence of that being. It could be just a play, but it could be, that it becomes some place that you just can't not do it. You can't be disrespectful.
Okay, right. I see what you mean. Was that that's the banana tree? It's like the skins of an onion. You're going.
Yes, you keep taking it, and there's no pith inside.
Yeah. Is this the was that given by way of explanation of Sila or Nietzsche?
No, I can't remember which one, but I was remembering it yesterday that he said, that there's no essence inside and he used a different Sri Lankan word. But so it was a couple of years ago. I can't remember the word. But listening, it just means, what is it Paladin said about therefore permanence is a very weak translation, and I agree. And I'm just saying, well, sometimes when something that seems permanent has a pith or a core, which it's hard to get rid of. But
like your
yes, and anicca means
enduring essence.
Yes, and this is become, even the core has disappeared when it's anicca.
Okay, right. Okay, so with the anicca, even the core has disappeared. So that thanks very much for that, Usha. I would say that explanation that you've given there very much goes with the meaning of Nietzsche and anicca. There is nothing, as it were, that forms its core, something you can say is deeply within it and belongs to it and is it.
Yeah.
So what you've just said, I think, does very much chime with my understanding of anicca. I think
just amplifying it.
Sila, the word sila, although it's a characteristic or a habit, I mean, I think I tend to interpret a habit that you can alter. And you can have a bad habit that you can get rid of. So the sila can be altered. It might take work to do it, but it can be altered. But if there's something that is Nietzsche, then that is essentially you and can't be altered, because if that's gone, you're gone.
And for example, when somebody attains stream entry, they can never again break sila. So for them, then it becomes Nietzsche. It becomes a core, because they say, don't they, that a stream entry's characteristics, even in a secret, they can't do anything that breaks the sila. In the Ratana Sutta, it says.
Okay, certainly, yeah. I mean, that is. So
it's like almost it's become deeply entrenched, the Nietzsche part.
Okay, no, that is.
I've just understood this while I'm listening.
Yeah. I mean, that is a perfectly good point, that the stream enterer, I've heard the same teaching, becomes incapable of, deliberately harming somebody, for example.
Yeah. And even secretly, it says in the Ratana Sutta.
Even rahasakatang, in because so much against their nature. So that would be something like where the sila has become Nietzsche.
Yes, yes, which is quite nice to consider. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I enjoyed
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
listening.
thanks very much for that. That's a very good point you made there, particularly the analogy of the banana tree. You go on stripping off part after part, and there's no pith or core.
Thank you.
So Vudhapachayano, beware here, we have our root chi. Let me just turn the page, sort of turn my, sorry, a bit fumbly. Here we are again. We have our root chi. Oops. Which is there are some roots that they're just two entirely separate words, and we've just got to live with that. The root chi is two entirely separate words, coincidentally with chi, one having the essential meaning of to heap up or to pile up, and the other meaning to to be respectful or to offer reverence. The first one meaning to heap up, pile up. We have it makes a verbal noun chaya. Now look at vichaya. Then we have the meritorious activity of dhammavichaya, which is often translated as the analysis of dhammas. Here's another word where our word analysis, another case where our habitual English translation is good enough as a one-word translation, but doesn't quite cut it, because the Dhammavichaya, the analysis of phenomena. So Vichaya, Chaya or Upachaya is putting together. Vichaya means pulling something apart, unheaping. So you have something like, you might say, let's take some mental phenomenon, let's say a mental burst of anger, for example. So what we do then on that, if we catch it and we're mindful enough, so what we do with that is a Dhamma Vichaya. The Dhamma is the phenomenon here. So the Vichaya is, as I say, often translated as analysis, but it means picking apart. Okay, ooh, I'm angry. Now stop. Let's just take this to bits. All the component parts, what's happening here? It's like taking a machine. An engineer might take a machine to bits and analyze all its component parts and see how it works. So this Dhammavichaya is when we are taking the component parts of some mental or any phenomenon, and is regarded as one of the bhujangas, the factors of enlightenment, Dhammavichaya, literally unheaping. Actually, Bhikkhu Bodhidhamma describes it as deconstructing, which I think is a very good way of putting it. Deconstructing. I say, oh, this is anger. Well, no, hang on. Analyze, take it to bits, unpack it. Unpacking, I think, would be a kind of another. It wouldn't do as deconstructing and unpacking wouldn't do as a poetic translation, though they are closer to what the original Pali means. The other chi that we have in the verse that we're looking at is a separate root meaning to praise. Oh yes, so to chi. Oops. What's going on here? Okay, so the chi, meaning to look at, and then by extension to look at respectfully. And the apachaya, the verbal noun, is treating with respect. So Buddha means grown, literally grown up, elders, people who have grown. It might not look like it, but the Pali word Buddha is etymologically the same as our English word grown or grow. Let me call up the Vrid. The Vedic root is just Vrid, meaning to grow. And if something is growing, intransitive, it's Atmanipula in Sanskrit, Vardhate, and in Pali, Vardhati. Vrid, we often see as languages develop down the various streams of the Indo-European languages into Latin, Greek, Germanic, the V often becomes a G. So the Vrid and our English word growth, Vrid, growth, are etymologically the same word. Now let's take the word grown and looking at Sanskrit now. So the past participle, Vrid plus ta, makes, by regular grammatical rules, Vriddha. Just in the same way as we know the Buddh, root Buddh to wake up, plus past participial ending ta makes Buddha. So Vriddha just means grown, and that's the same one that in Pali becomes Buddha, just by phonetic mutation between Sanskrit and Pali. I'm sorry, Simon, I was looking at my screen and observed not your hand.
Sorry, just to look at this compound as a whole. Vudhapachayino, of one who reveres or honors elders.
Yeah.
But the versions I've got also give Vadha Pachayino, and looking at the second line, Vadhanti, they grow. Could this not be a different type of compound, like a Kammadarya, which is referring to one whose reverence is growing, one who has growing reverence?
Do you know, it could. Yes, I hadn't spotted that. Yeah, it could be either. So the Buddha means, as ordinary meaning, grown, as in grown up, got bigger. And it can keep its ordinary meaning, or it can then specifically mean older people, one's elders. So yeah, so Buddhapachayana, those whose hang on, I wonder if that falls, because on that second, people whose respect is growing or has grown, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, because the verbal noun would be vudhi, wouldn't it? Vudhi is growth.
Yeah.
And you would knock off the E. It could just be Vudhapachayino. One of increasing respect.
I would, on that interpretation, I prefer to see it remaining as a past participle, because vudhi on its own is a verbal noun meaning growth. Vudha as a participial adjective meaning grown. Vudhapachayana would kind of make sense. Vudhi apachayana wouldn't quite make sense to me. It doesn't detract from your point. Your point remains perfectly valid, provided you treat this as the past participle Buddha rather than the noun Buddhi. Buddhi apachayano doesn't quite sit right with me, but Buddha apachayano does. But your point remains entirely valid. So yes, I mean, I agree with your alternative interpretation. I mean, I agree that they both are equally valid under the Pali rules of compounds and grammar. Buddha Pachayano. Okay, let's take it as what we started off with, the Buddha Apachaya, respect of elders, Buddha Pachayin, one who has respect for his elders. Now, if it's one whose apachaya has grown, I would have expected not an ending in ino, but just Buddha Pachayo. One whose apachaya is Buddha would be a Buddha Pachayo, not a Buddha Pachayin. That's not absolute. That would just be far more normal. But you've made a good point, and it could be right, and it may be one of these numerous things we're seeing the whole time, where the one speaker might, even a native speaker of the time, one might interpret in one way, another in another way, and a third person both at the same time, holding both equally. So thank you, Simon. Yes, I agree with your point. And you see the difference here between Buddha and Vedhanti. I suspect that this is simply because in Sanskrit, the past participle, sorry, iPad, past participle is vriddha, as we know, this r, Pali doesn't have a r, so Pali's got to put in another vowel instead of it, and the vowel that goes in will typically have the same characteristic as the preceding consonant. So the v is a labial, so it tends to v. It tends to go out as a v. So vriddha, you would see coming out as Buddha in Pali.
Why do the D's become retroflex?
They quite frequently do in Pali, where you have got the loss of a r, either consonantal or vocalic. And it's a little bit hit and miss in Pali. I'll come right back to that, Paladin. Remind me if I forget. A little bit hit and miss. I'll give you a couple of examples, whether it does or doesn't. Oops. So that's vriddha, Buddha, the vrituvu. Vardhate, which is the present tense, stress on the a, because you've got a stressed a in Sanskrit, Pali doesn't feel the need to change that, and that's why it can keep itself as a va, so vardhati. So vriddha, Buddha, Sanskrit Pali, vriddha, Buddha, and Sanskrit Pali, vardhate. The a is kind of stressed and obvious, and so it doesn't feel inclined to change. This rule about where something becomes a retroflex and where it doesn't, again, Pali is a little bit loose on that. Let me give you one well-known example. It's the our word artha. And that's very often means can mean wealth, the goal, the objective, destination. That's from the root ri, meaning to the artha, that to which you go, your destination, what you want. Therefore, it means a goal, objective. It also means the meaning of a word. So after you have a word, and its meaning is, what it's getting at, what it's aiming at. So artha, Pali, can have both. It can be atta with a dental or atta. And you will find both. I think atta is more common, but for example, several of the commentaries have the title Attakatha. Kata meaning saying or speaking. The Attakatha means meaning speaking. In other words, something that explains the meaning of a text. And just by convention or by usage, in that compound, you see the retroflex form. And this is another example of the ambiguities that can sometimes arise because of the phonetics of Pali. In Sanskrit, you have artha, the word we've just been describing, and also ashta, meaning 8. That's the sh that in Latin became a k, where we have octo, octagon, and through the Germanic languages became a ch, as in modern German acht, and then in modern English 8, where we write the gh for the ch, but we don't pronounce it anymore. So in fact, our modern English word, the octo, acht, 8, and ashta, and Pali atta are all etymologically the same word. So artha and ashta. So artha, as we've just seen, can become in Pali atta, atta, or atta, and ashta becomes in Pali ka. So if you see the word in context, of course, it will always be clear which it is. But if you see the word atta with the retroflex subdotted T in isolation, you won't know. It could be either goal objective or the number 8. Okay, any further clarification? Oh, Simon, please comment.
Yeah, I've just found here on Vadhati, it says, to this root belongs the Pali Udha, high up. Is that right? I mean, that's brilliant, isn't it? It just means like piled up. Is that the case?
Sorry, which work were you looking at there?
Vadhati.
Sorry, which work and which source were you looking at for that?
PED. I've got the the online PED that we use.
Okay, the PTS dictionary, you mean?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. There was actually, I was actually in the middle of writing something on that a while ago. I haven't got around to finishing yet. So just looking at the. So did you which word did you look up in the search?
Vadhati.
Hang on.
That's it.
Vadhati. That's odd. I'm not getting a response to it. My system is playing up. I keep getting beeps when I try to do something perfectly normal. My system is playing up. Okay, let's see. Let's go down and find it. Oh God. Try again. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Either the system's gone wrong. Colon space. But sorry, it's not letting me do it. I don't know why.
It doesn't really affect this text. I just thought it was pretty wonderful that Udha could come from Vadhati, just in the sense it's so simple. It just means kind of, I don't know, piled up on top, high up, because it's kind of grown, it's got bigger.
So was that the word Udva or Vudha?
No, Vadhati. It's
Vadhati.
this root belongs to Pali Udha, high up.
Okay, I've seen what's happened with my system. It won't, somehow it's not loading up for me. Let me get out of it and try again.
Okay, it will derail things, so check it later. But I just thought it was an interesting little snippet.
I will. And let me just see. Well, okay. Get out of it and turn it on again. Usually works, and it did this time. Except that it sometimes gives me a tiny bit of screen. Come on. Here we are. To this root belongs the Pali Udha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I misheard you by saying this root belongs to them. So yeah, so the Pali Udha and Urdhvam, Udham, what's the word? Above, below, and all round. Also he makes it cognitive orthos, as in orthodox and so on. Okay, so there we are. So Udha as well. I wonder what's the Sanskrit for? In Sanskrit, Urdhva. Now, okay, let's get into this. Urdhva. Yes, here we are. Back to good old Monia Williams. So Urdhva from Vrid. Indeed, yes, I hadn't spotted that. Very good. Rising, tending upwards, raised or growing, is growing, Urdhva.
I would have thought it was Ud, up, and then Da, like held or kind of cleansed.
Actually, no. The Pali Udha would not be the Ud of up. It would be the Vre becoming an U.
Yeah.
So if you look back to the Sanskrit, Urdhva, Vridva could become an Urdhva with the Samprasa, with the softening of the Va to U. So the root definitively there is Vrid again.
That's what I mean. I would have thought it was Ud, but it's not. I mean,
it's not. No, it's not. No.
It's the interesting bit.
Yeah. So had you originally thought it was Ud, and then saw from the PTS it wasn't.
Well, I would have assumed that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's worth checking these minute little things. Which you did to good advantage here, Simon. That's the way. So, Chattaro Dhamma Vardhanti. Dhamma here is the word Dhamma used in its very, very wide sense. Here's just phenomena or things. So for Dhamma, four things, Vardhanti, increase. They increase for whom? For, there's genitive / dative, the people who are the people who have the two characteristics described in the first line, namely, for somebody who is Abhivadanasilin and somebody who's Vudhapachayan. For such people, these characteristics increase. How do we know whether this is intended as a dative or a genitive? Grammatically, the genitive and the dative have merged into one in Pali, but in this kind of case in Sanskrit, it's the genitive that is used. So for characteristics increase, for phenomena increase, Chattaro Dhamma Vardhanti, of the Vabhivadana Sila, Silin, and of the Vudhapachayan. So treat these as genitives. So four characteristics, four things increase for one who has these two characteristics. And here we've just got a list of four nouns: Ayu, Varno, Sukham, Balam. The original meaning of Ayu is life, and then by extension, kind of a healthy life and length of life, not just a measure of between birth and death, but the idea of health as well, life, your Ayu. You can call somebody, the Avuso, which is from the sound of Ayushman, having a long life. And we have Ayurveda, and sounds Ayurveda from that same word, Ayurveda, literally life science is what the Ayurveda actually means. Life knowledge, life science, the knowledge of how to enhance life. Vanno originally meant kind of a covering, but then meant a color, because something, the color is something that its outer surface projects. But then by extension, it comes to mean beauty. One, and Suvarna, literally good color, actually is a word that came to mean gold, Suvarna. And one ancient word, Shri Nimala, I don't know if you still use it, but for your esteemed country of Sri Lanka, it used to, one ancient name is in Sanskrit is Suvarna Dwipa, literally the Golden Island, Suvarna Dwipa, the Golden Island. Is that used anymore by anyone?
Yeah, Swarnadeepa. They
Sorry,
just say like that sometimes, Swarnadeepa. Yeah.
Suvarnadeepa.
Yes.
Ah, Suvarnadeepa. Okay, so that's taken as, so that's the Sanskrit Suvarnadeepa taken over with
Yes.
the Pali / singular phonetics. Suvarnadeepa.
Yes.
Okay,
Swarnadeepa.
wonderful. So there we are. It's from Suvarnadvipa, literally the Golden Island, and which was then another form of that came into English long ago was Serendip, was a word that came to me.
yeah.
Serendip, from which we get
Serendip,
from which you get serendipity, because there was this folk tale of the princes of Serendip who had these fantastical adventures where what they needed always turned up just when they needed it, from which you get serendipity, the knack of being able to find what you want just when you need it. But it's from Suvarnadvipa, Serendip, the princes of serendipity.
and Taprobane. They call Taprobane also.
I'm sorry, say again.
Taprobane.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Well, can anyone else help me with the hearing isn't coming through?
Taprobane. Serendipity, Taprobane, Swarnadeep, they all call for Sri Lanka.
Okay, right.
Taprobane, sir.
If you're able just to write that down and send it to me, it would be good to, because I didn't catch all the words. If you're able to write that and send it to me, that would be fantastic, and we can look at it next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone.
Okay, I will.
If you can do that, it will help me, and hopefully it will help the whole group, and we can look at it next time round. So. Okay, so we'll resume on this verse when we meet again in a week's time. Oops. Sorry, let me just rearrange my gallery. There we are. Okay, thank you all then, and I will see some of you in 3/4 of an hour for the Sanskrit, and the rest of you hopefully next week.
Thank you, James.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you all
James.
very much.
Thank
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.